Here we are, Bromley Buzz in Parliament with Gareth Bacon MP. Welcome back to the Bromley Buzz podcast with myself, Darren, Weale and
Zeenat, Noorani, the Clarity Coach. It's like our third interview with you, isn't it? A fourth.
Yes, we've done
quite a few.
Several, I think.
Several, yes.
Always a pleasure.
First time here.
well, it's lovely to have come up to Westminster for this as opposed to the Orpington office because that's the dual identity of the MP, local interests and national politics. So what do you think of your office up here by comparison with down there?
Well, it's quite nice up here. I'll be honest, and there's more of my stuff in it because I'm here a lot longer. Obviously, Parliament sits at least 4 days a week, so I'm here Monday through to Thursdays, most weeks. This week I'll actually be here on Friday as well because we've got the private members' bill about assisted dying, and I think most MPs won't be in their constituencies on Friday. They'll be here to vote on that. So I'm here for a lot of hours. So I make it nice and comfy for myself, which it is, I think.
Well, I can see some typical Gareth bits here.
Yes, there are a few.
So we've got Churchill in one of his grumpy faces, which is fairly default anyway. Wellington and others. Oh, and the classic red box, the dispatch box, because you're a minister.
That was when I was a minister.
Minister.
Yes, so it used to be a tradition that you were presented with the last red box you worked from when you left whichever department you worked in. That was dispensed with some time ago, so if you want to have your red box you can, but you have to buy it, and they're very expensive. Even old beaten up ones like my one, which has got the wrong cipher on it, of course, it's got the Queen's cipher on it, and they're all being replaced to put C3R on it. But that was one of three that I had in my private office, and it's too good an opportunity not to have one as a souvenir because you never know when they might come around again. So I was very grateful to get that.
I haven't kept up with what the Chancellor has these days, where they've moved on from the old battered black box that they used to have. I don't suppose that's very viable.
No, I think it was Gordon Brown that got rid of that. So it was Gladstone's, I think, dispatch box that they used to use, which was very much smaller than one of these, which is a good thing because these things are really heavy even when they're empty because they're lead lined. And he got a brand new one, I think, to demonstrate how new Labour was. I have a feeling, I might be wrong about this, but I think George Osborne bought the old one back. But the one that Rachel Reeves was holding up for the budget a few weeks ago, I think wasn't the Gladstone one. I think it was a newer one. So yes, so it's I think the old one's probably in a museum somewhere or in the Treasury or something like that.
It's very nice to be close up to one.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that's in common in any case is that wherever you are, you're an MP and you're representing your party and the local constituency at the same time.
Yes.
But as we're here, what's a day in the life of yourself when Parliament is sitting and you're up here?
Well, it varies day by day. So today, for example, most days I'll arrive in the office between 7 and 7:30, and I won't go home until we finish voting if we are voting on that day. So today we will be voting probably around about 10 o'clock this evening. That's normal on a Monday. So depending on how many votes there are, anything between 15 minutes and an hour to an hour and a half, because there could be a lot. So it means getting home quite late. Tuesday we vote at 7 normally, so again, depending on how long the votes are. Wednesday's the same as that. Thursday is invariably a one-line whip, and what that means is that there's no votes on a Thursday. So we would normally go home around about 6, because a lot of MPs might go sooner than that because it's a one-line whip because they're going back to their constituencies. And Friday is constituency day, so I'll be in the constituency all day long, and it depends what's happening in the evening. If I've got, say, a resident association meeting or my executive council at my local association, it might be sort of 10 or 11 o'clock in the evening that I get home. During the day, so on a Monday I have my team meetings in the morning. I've got the shadow transport meeting at midday, and we're going to have things going on in the chamber. I've got various other meetings today. Tuesday we have shadow cabinet in the morning, and then depending on what's going on in the house later. Wednesday is Prime Minister's questions, which obviously I'm not directly involved in, but I will be in there supporting. And Thursday depends again what's going on in the House. So the last 2 Mondays I've had to go to the House to respond to a statement by the Transport Secretary, which you don't get an awful lot of notice of. That's normally by about 11:30 we'll know whether or not I would need to be in the chamber doing that. And then of course preparation needs to go into that. So it's quite, it is quite full on. And then on top of all of that, constituency casework needs to be done as well. We get lots and lots of emails from constituents on a daily basis. My staff help me with that. But on Thursdays, they will give me a correspondence pack, which is all of the emails that have come in for reply. They'll draft responses for me. I normally go through that and red pen a lot of it and change it. And then they'll get dispatched on a Friday.
So there's a lot going on here, isn't there? So how would you say that's different from your office in Orpington when you're at
well, in Orpington,
how different is it?
So that's the office in Orpington is basically a base of operations. So I will go there same sort of time on a Friday morning, sort of 7:30. My day normally starts over in Tesco's because I'll pop over and do a bit of shopping, both for the office. Well, I'll get milk because I drink lots of coffee. But also some of the heavier shopping for home, I'll do that as well. And then depending on what's in the diary, I will have various meetings throughout the day, normally me going out to visit other people rather than them coming in. Some Fridays I'll have my constituency surgeries in the afternoon. So last Friday, for example, I had my constituency surgery. We had 8 people come see me. And you know, it varies in terms of whatever else is going on. So I start my day there and I finish my day there. So I'm often in and out of there, whereas in Parliament I'm in here most of the time, unless I'm in the chamber.
Yeah, and as you have a shadowy existence now.
Shadowy existence.
The second part of that is Transport Secretary as well. Sorry, first part indeed. The second part is the Shadow Minister for London.
That's right.
Yeah. Does that keep you busy as well?
Yeah, very much so. So I mean, I was appointed, I think it was 3 weeks ago today, in the evening. The following morning we had Shadow Cabinet. Within an hour of coming out of Shadow Cabinet, I had to be in the chamber responding to an urgent question, which I had no notice of prior to that. And that afternoon I was speaking in what's known as a delegated legislation committee in the afternoon, which required me to stand up and make a 5-minute speech about something Labour are doing with buses. And we've had to appoint a team, get ourselves organised. There's a lot going on. So yeah, it does keep me quite busy. And the Shadow Minister for London thing was only confirmed last week. So we haven't got that up and running yet, but that will be the next thing on the agenda.
Well, I know that on the national side and in Parliament, things which come up through MPs about their constituency can be fairly far and few between. Does Orpington come up much?
In Parliament?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think. Sometimes, I mean, it depends on the issue. So, for example, one issue that went very large for quite a long time was the ultra-low emission zone expansion. I mean, I took a fairly forward lean on that because as a former London Assembly member, I could see the danger coming over the hill. So I think I was the first member of Parliament to bring that up, and it was from the perspective of my constituents. That then went a bit bigger than that for quite a while. But generally speaking, I mean, questions about the impact on Orpington could be anything with government policy. I mean, some of the changes in the budget around inheritance tax for farmers, for example. Now that I'm a shadow cabinet member, I won't be speaking from the backbenches, so I will be speaking in Parliament according to my brief rather than in terms of my constituents, but of course I will put in written questions as well, and there may be debates as well, but I can't really speak about Orpington on its own anymore because of my front bench role.
Very interesting. There's so many nuances to politics in that way. However, one thing that really strikes me as soon as I come anywhere near Parliament is history. And I've already alluded to Wellington and Churchill. Are there any moments as you walk around the parliamentary estate and things you see that give you a moment to pause or shiver or whatever, in the way that Oliver Cromwell did to me this morning?
Yes, very much so. So I've never forgotten the privilege it is to be the Member of Parliament for Orpington. There are some downsides to being an MP. Some of the criticism you get, some of the attacks you have to endure. can be a bit much sometimes. So normally at least once a week I will walk around, not the building that we're in at the moment, this is Podcast House, but I'll walk around the Palace of Westminster, the old historic bit. And I'll do it slowly, and I'll look at what I'm walking past rather than simply speed past it. And just drink it in. And I normally would go from here and I'd go through Westminster Hall, which is the oldest part of Parliament. That's where Parliament used to sit. It's where King Charles I was tried for treason. It's where William Morris was tried for treason and St Thomas More. It's where the Queen lay in state and her parents. It's where foreign presidents come to address Parliament. And I'll get to the top of that and I'll get to St Stephen's Corridor. That used to be the public entrance, St Stephen's entrance. And I'll stand and pause there and look at what I'm seeing, because my first visit to Parliament was when I was 15 years old, and that was when I came in. That was my first view of the inside of the Palace of Westminster. And so I think back to my 15-year-old self and remember the sense of awe that I had looking at this building. And I haven't lost it. It's still there. And my first week as a Member of Parliament back in 2019, I would try and find as many doors as possible that said members only and walk through them because I could. And I've been here for multiple meetings before that, not as an MP, where there are bits of the palace that I couldn't go to, but now there are no-go areas. And that's a privilege, and I remember that.
May I ask, with you being your 15-year-old self, did you ever imagine yourself to be sitting where you are now?
I imagined it, but very much in the same way that I imagined playing rugby for England or winning Wimbledon. It was one of those dreams that you have, but I wasn't sure that I would ever be able to do it. It's not easy to become an MP. As I've just discovered, it's not easy to stay as an MP. And I do have moments where I'm basically pinching myself. I'll never forget the first time I sat on the benches as a Member of Parliament. And it was the Sunday after the election, and newly elected MPs are encouraged to come in because you have to sign forms and you pick up your laptop and the rest of the things. But one of the things that happens is that one of the doorkeepers will give new MPs a tour of the behind-the-scenes parts of the palace that you can't go into, including the chamber. And I was the only person in the room apart from the doorkeeper. And I asked permission first, but obviously was granted it to go and sit on one of the benches. And so I did, and I sat there for a couple of minutes and just looked around and drank it in. And that was a really pinch yourself moment, because it'd been a very long journey to get to that point, and it was quite special.
One of those myself. So the podcast has been running for over 3 years now, and amongst the things I haven't expected is doing an interview with Big Ben.
Big Ben
recording in the background.
Oh, I see.
Just now, yeah. So it's a subtle sound. It's muffled by the building, but nevertheless, there it went, and you get that hour by hour.
Oh, you get it every 15 minutes because the clock chimes all the time, and it's just there. So my office clock actually out of my window is Big Ben.
That's wonderful for you. I didn't realise that.
It's quite good, isn't it? So that was one of the bonuses of getting this office when I was given it after the election. And when the weather's warm, these patio doors behind you there, Darren, open. So to cool the place down, you open it up, and then you can see it in crystal clear coming through the window. And it's funny because I think it was 2 years that I was an MP, Big Ben was still being refurbished, so it's covered in scaffolding, the bells are chiming. So we weren't used to it, the MPs elected in 2019. So when it started chiming again, it was like, wow, this is really good. And after a while, you don't notice it, but in 10 minutes, I mean, it's now 10 to 11, in 10 minutes it's going to go off big time because
Is it
you'll hear.
loud then?
Yeah.
It must be.
Well, you'll hear it, yeah.
Right, in that case, I'll invite you to keep talking for at least
Another 10 minutes,
Yeah.
exactly. You want the chime in there.
And that brings me on to local matters. Would you like to tell us about anything that's been going on in Orpington that has come your way lately, perhaps including the post bag, where you've been out and about?
Well, we had obviously Remembrance Sunday recently, and we did that very well in Orpington, in my view. It takes quite a long time because we do, obviously, the War Memorial just outside my office. We have a big ceremony there, which a lot of people come to. It's very well supported and very respectfully observed, and all of the cadet forces come and do a march, which is always very good. We always have representatives of the Canadian Armed Forces there. And the reason for that is because we go from the War Memorial down to All Saints Church. We have a service in there. We then go out into the graveyard because the last civilian killed by enemy action in Great Britain during the war is buried there, Ivy Millichamp. And we do a service at her grave, but then we go to Canadian Corner, which is where we've got Canadian war dead buried. And we do another service there and more replaying. And it's very well done. And then we go off to the Royal British Legion afterwards over the road and have a bit of a social really. So there's drinks and more speeches and a bit of food and stuff. So the whole thing takes probably around about sort of 4.5 to 5 hours, which I think is time very well spent. And it brings the community together, which I think is a really good thing. So we had that. This week, surgery, I can't really talk about the stuff that goes on in surgery. Some of the stuff that's coming through my post bag a lot, and on both sides of the argument at the moment, is about the assisted dying vote, the second reading of the Private Members Bill, which is being read on Friday. And there's impassioned arguments on both sides. It's probably one of the largest issues that I've had in my post bag since I've been a Member of Parliament. I won't be speaking in that debate for a number of reasons. Number one is what I was saying earlier on about my shadow cabinet position. It's a backbench debate rather than front benches, but I think most of the front benches will be in and will be voting. And also, because it's a private members bill, Parliament on a Friday sits between 9:30 and 2:30 rather, so 5 hours. And there are no limits on speeches, no time limits. And I gather over 100 MPs are put in to speak. Now, even if all of them are called to speak, that means that they've only got 3 minutes each. So a lot of them won't get a chance to speak unless the Speaker imposes speaking limits. Kim Leadbeater, whose bill it is, will open the debate and will speak, I would imagine, for at least half an hour. So a large amount of time is going to go out the window. So I'll be doing a video afterwards explaining which way I voted and why, and what the next steps will be, because if the bill gets the second reading, it means it will go into various parliamentary stages after that. The committee stage will be the next thing. If it doesn't get a second reading, then the bill will stop at that point. Another bill could be introduced at some point in the future, but this particular bill will be for the time being dead.
Very significant parliamentary moment, that one.
Yes, it is, potentially. I mean, if the bill were, if it passes on Friday, it doesn't mean that it's law suddenly. There's a lot of process still to go through. But it would have a very big impact. And it's an impact that could expand over time or not. No one really knows at the moment.
Well, away from the bill and back to Orpington, and maybe even here in Parliament as well. 2025 is around the corner now. Anything that you're looking forward to in that?
Well, there's much that I'm looking forward to. Not so much politically. As I said off air, I'm looking forward to the England rugby team learning how to tackle, and the Manchester United football team learning how to score goals again, because that seems to be in short supply. I think in terms of the country, we're still getting used to the change in government, and we're not quite sure how things are going to play out. I mean, I don't want to stray too much into party politics. I've got some reservations about how the new government are proceeding, and judging by my post bag, I think a lot of my constituents have as well. But it needs to settle down, because we haven't really got into the swing of things yet. We had the election in July, we came back to Parliament for 2 weeks when everyone was exhausted, and then we went on to summer recess, came back for another couple of weeks, then went on to the conference recess. We're now just starting to get into the rhythm of parliamentary life post-election, and starting to feel the legislation coming through from the government. So I think 2025 we're going to learn a lot more about what this government will actually look like, getting away from the headlines, getting away from some of the hyperbole. I think we'll start to feel a lot more which direction the country is going in, and I think that'll be quite an interesting time.
No, completely. Actually, I'm mesmerised, completely off the topic, by your books up there, the selection of books that you have there. Is there any particular book that you kind of draw yourself back into quite often, or maybe?
Well, there is, albeit not because it's particularly. I'll show you which one it is. It's this one. So the significance of this book. This is a novel. So most of these books, as you can tell, are biographies of
Yes.
quite serious political people, mostly. This isn't. This is a novel, and this is written by Jeffrey Archer. And this is why I got interested in politics. This book. It's written in it's set. It starts in 1964, and it's about 4 fictitious members of Parliament who are elected for the first time. 2 Labour, 2 Conservative, and it traces their careers over the next quarter of a century, and it intermingles them with real historical figures. So Harold Wilson, James Callaghan, Edward Heath, Margaret Thatcher, they're all in it. And it traces the careers of these 4 MPs, and one of them ultimately becomes Prime Minister. And there's a big tumultuous general election right at the end of the book, where one of them is the Conservative leader, one of them is the Labour leader, one of them is the leader of the SDP, and one of them has become, by that point, Speaker of the House of Commons. And it ends up in a hung parliament, and it's all going to hinge on who the SDP leader decides to back. Would it be the Conservative, would it be Labour? And you find out on the final line of the final page who that person is. And this book was dramatised on ITV in 1986, and it's fantastic. I've got it on DVD, and I regularly rewatch it. It's 10 hours of very good television, and they get parliamentary procedure right, which is pretty good. They built an 80% scale mock-up of the House of Commons, which is pretty accurate as well, including members' lobby and some of the other rooms, which is pretty good. And this is in a time where Parliament hadn't been, I don't think it was even televised at that point. So for them to get it completely right was pretty good. And I watched this, my teenage self watched this and absolutely loved it. And I read the book. And that's what got me interested. And last year, I told that story to another member of Parliament at the number 10 Christmas drinks last year. And this particular MP was going off to Jeffrey Archer's Christmas soiree. And he said, well, you should tell Jeffrey that story, he'd love it. And I said, well, I don't have contact details for Jeffrey Archer. Anyway, he got them for me. So I dropped Jeffrey Archer an email, and he took me out for lunch earlier this year and signed the book for me. And that photograph up there is me with Jeffrey Archer after lunch, after he signed my book.
Fantastic.
Oh, wow, what
which is, and that's why that's up there. Oh yes, I mean this literally is the thing that first
there's something we need to read.
stimulates my interest. It is very readable. I'm not a retainer from Jeffrey Archer to tell you that. No, it's very good, and so that I do come back to that a lot, because that was what first made me interested in politics. Until that point, I was only interested in sport, really, and then I decided that politics was sport in suits, because it's very competitive, and that appealed to me.
It's a different.
Yeah. Have you learned to tackle?
Lovely.
Well, tackling wasn't my best thing actually when I was playing. I could do it a bit, but not brilliantly.
Because one of the things that we talked about in earlier podcasts is the fact that you have young people coming through your doors as a parliamentarian, and you encourage them into politics as well, which is a good thing. Yeah,
we have a lot of work experience requests, and I try to grant as many of those as I can. They tend to be children, young people I should say, who are in year 12 at school, so 16, 17. And we can only take 2 per week at a time. Often summer, it gets very busy. So June and July, we tend to have a full complement of work experience people coming in. But sometimes other points in the year as well. So we've had quite a lot through the door. And I think it's quite valuable. I mean, my staff do a great job with them. So they will look after them most of the time, because where I'm going and what I'm doing, inevitably they can't always come. But they will always get a meeting with me, probably an hour and a half to 2 hours, where they can just ask me whatever they like. But they'll get a tour, they'll get to sit in the chamber, they go to Westminster Hall, they'll see committees, whatever's happening, we'll try and get them in there. We get them to do a written piece of work as well, so a briefing for me on a subject of their choice, which they'll research, normally with the House of Commons Library. And I think they tend to enjoy it, and I think it's important to do it because it's very easy for people to have made up minds about politicians, members of Parliament, the Prime Minister, whomever, but they don't know who these people really are, because when you see people on television you think you know them, and the truth is you really don't, and seeing them walking around as human beings just like them is an important part of anyone's education.
It's a different perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, I remember when I first came here and I'd be sort of standing there seeing famous people that I'd only ever seen on television walking past me. And it's the same for them. And I think that's important, so we're always quite willing to accommodate that.
Do you know what, that would be quite nice for something to have with the Skills 3030 with Paul Andrews that we do often, and Sarah did one at Goldsmiths Colleges where we get 30 businesses or people to come in and talk to students of year 12 or university, which we did recently at Goldsmiths College, to give them an insight. There we go, that could be something.
Yeah, maybe. I'm quite happy to do that. I mean, it is an important thing, I think, for people to realise that no one goes into politics to make life worse for anyone. Everyone goes in for a completely opposite reason. You can disagree about what you do and how you do it. But there is, especially now in the age of I'm afraid to say it, social media, this is going to go bong 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 quite a lot. Don't think you're going to pick it up one day. But in the age of social media, people have very cynical views about politicians and forget that most people are in it for the right reasons, not the wrong reasons.
But I think also, thinking about that, because I grew up in the Middle East, so it was very different, and we don't get this insight. So we get a very different perspective of politicians and the Parliament, and so I think it's very, very valuable, and it is an important thing that should be encouraged as well.
Well, I mean, Britain is quite, there's quite open access to members of Parliament. So most MPs do surgeries, most MPs will have meetings with constituents. I mean, I will spend my time going out to schools, primary or secondary, and speaking to local people. And in schools, of course, the children don't have votes. I'm not going there because I'm chasing votes. I'm going there because I'm engaging with, and I've got plenty of time for that. When I get requests to do that, I'm always willing to do it. And again, most MPs are, and in other countries, you simply wouldn't get that kind of access.
Thank you for your time this morning.
It's a pleasure as always.
And with the timing in the background as
Perfect
well.
timing.
Yeah.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure, as always. And it's
Likewise.
nice to be on a different location.